There's a gas station parking lot somewhere near you with a puddle in it that has been sitting since the last time it rained. Brown at the edges, a thin film on top, probably warm. You wouldn't go near it, but a crow will walk right up, dip its beak in, and drink like it ordered that water specifically. Then it flies off, completely fine. Meanwhile, one sip of that same puddle, and you'd be calling in sick for 3 days. So what's actually happening there? How does an animal with a brain roughly the size of a walnut handle water that your immune system would treat like a full-scale emergency? The answer isn't simple, and it isn't one thing. It's a cascade of overlapping systems, each doing a different job, all of them running at the same time. And it's not just crows. It's rats drinking from sewer runoff. It's wild boar rooting through swampy ground. It's your neighbor's cat lapping from a bird bath that hasn't been cleaned since spring. Once you understand the biology here, the whole thing stops looking like luck and starts looking like engineering. There's one thing worth getting straight before we go any further, though. The framing of this is a bit deceptive, and it's worth being honest about that up front. Animals do get sick from contaminated water. They die from it, actually. Waterborne pathogens kill wildlife regularly, and the numbers aren't small. The reason it feels like animals are invincible is a visibility problem. When a wild animal gets seriously ill, it doesn't stagger out into the open. It retreats, finds somewhere hidden, and either recovers or doesn't. You're not watching that part. You're watching the ones that made it. The ones that didn't are already gone before you arrive. With that said, animals genuinely do survive these exposures at a rate that we simply couldn't match. And the first reason starts before water even reaches the stomach. It starts with acid. Human stomach acid sits somewhere between pH 1.5 and 3.5, which sounds aggressive until you compare it to a vulture. Vultures have stomach acid that measures around pH 1, sometimes lower. That's acid strong enough to destroy anthrax spores and dissolve bone fragments whole. These are birds that eat rotting carcasses for a living. Their stomach is essentially a sterilization unit. What goes in heavily contaminated comes out the other side largely neutralized. Wolves and wild dogs sit in a similar range. Their stomach pH hovers close to 1, far more acidic than a typical human's. The practical effect is that bacteria entering that environment face conditions so extreme that most of them can't survive long enough to cause any real damage. It's not that the bacteria don't get in, they get in. They just hit a wall almost immediately. The stomach isn't filtering the water so much as it's destroying whatever came with it. And that destruction happens fast, which connects directly to the second factor. Transit time matters enormously. The faster material moves through a digestive tract, the less time bacteria have to do anything useful. Colonizing a gut takes time. Multiplying takes time. Causing an actual infection takes time. In a wolf or a wild dog, that window is narrow. The digestive system is built for speed rather than extended processing. Food can spend 20 to 30 hours moving through a human gut. In a dog, that same process can happen in 6 to 8 hours. Bacteria that might have had enough time to establish themselves in a human simply don't get that opportunity. The environment moves on before they can settle. Now there's another layer that almost never gets brought up. Saliva. Animal saliva, particularly in carnivores, isn't just a digestive lubricant. It's an active chemical barrier. It contains lysozyme, which physically ruptures bacterial cell walls, and lactoferrin, a protein that strips away the iron bacteria need to reproduce. Without iron, bacterial populations can't multiply effectively. Then you have peroxidase enzymes and immunoglobulins running on top of that, which are essentially antibodies doing active patrol work before anything even hits the throat. So by the time water reaches the stomach, it's already been partially processed. Not perfectly, but meaningfully. Then there's the microbiome. Inside every healthy animal is an ecosystem of trillions of microorganisms, bacteria, and fungi, and other microbes that have spent years calibrating specifically to that animal's body and local environment. Think of it as a very crowded city where every available niche is already occupied. When a new bacterial strain arrives, it doesn't land in open territory. It lands in the middle of an established population that's already competing hard for the same resources. The newcomers rarely win that fight. The existing community outcompetes them through sheer density and familiarity. This is why animals that drink regularly from the same source develop a kind of tolerance over time. The microbiome has already cataloged those bacteria. It knows exactly what to do. The microbiome advantage compounds over generations. Wild animals that have accessed the same water sources for years, or whose ancestors did before them, have inherited microbial populations specifically adapted to local contaminants. There's a memory embedded in the system. It's not conscious, but it functions like experience passed down at the cellular level. A crow returning to the same parking lot week after week has a microbiome that's learned the signature of that particular puddle. The adaptation isn't just to bacteria in general, but to the specific bacterial profiles of its environment. This is why moving a wild animal to a completely different ecosystem can sometimes overwhelm its defenses. The microbiome has been perfectly tuned to one place, and suddenly it's facing an entirely different microbial landscape. And this is actually why domestic animals can sometimes be more vulnerable than wild ones. A cat that spent its whole life drinking from a filtered bowl has a microbiome calibrated for that clean environment. Take it outside and let it drink from a pond it's never encountered, and the system doesn't have the same response ready. The adaptation isn't in the genes alone.
It's in the accumulated history of exposure. You genuinely can't shortcut that with a single afternoon at a muddy stream. Rats are worth talking about here because they represent something different again. A rat's immune response has evolved under pressure so constant and so varied that it's become remarkably broad in its tolerances. Rats live in environments with bacterial diversity that most animals never encounter, and they've been doing it generation after generation for a very long time. The result is an immune profile that's been stress tested in ways that most other mammals haven't experienced. Their advantage isn't just about stomach acid or transit time.
It's the entire immune architecture, shaped by living in some of the most contaminated environments on the planet for millions of years running. What about humans then? The question seems worth asking. The honest answer is that we opted out. Humans developed fire and cooking, which killed pathogens before food ever reached the stomach. Then came fermentation, boiling water, and eventually full water treatment infrastructure. We moved the filtration outside the body instead of building it deeper into the body. That trade-off has been extraordinarily successful. Clean water systems have saved more human lives than almost any other invention in recorded history. But the consequence is that our digestive systems have been optimized for safety and purity. Our stomach acid is not as intensely powerful because it doesn't need to dissolve raw bone. Our microbiomes are less hardened because we've dramatically reduced their exposure to pathogens over generations. We didn't get weaker, we redirected the effort outward. That crow drinking from the parking lot puddle has an internal system refined over millions of years of doing exactly that. We built water treatment plants. Honestly, both approaches work. The next time you watch an animal drinking from something that looks genuinely dangerous, you're watching about 5 separate defense systems running at once. The saliva begins the chemical processing before anything reaches the gut. The stomach acid handles most of what gets through. The short transit time denies bacteria the opportunity to settle in. The microbiome outcompetes anything that survives that far. And underneath all of it is an immune system shaped by a lifetime of exactly this kind of exposure. That crow in the parking lot isn't being reckless. From where it's standing, that puddle isn't even a challenge worth registering.